Thank you so much. All right. So we'll proceed. Please, the presentations are 10 minutes. If 10 minutes is up, we would
Okay.
have to come in. Do we have
Thank you.
Seidu et al. Also an online presentation? Are they online? Seidu et al.
Yes.
So Seidu, you have 10 minutes, please. Please stick to your time for us. It's 4:13 GMT.
All right. Yes. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's not 12 midnight here. So my name is Seidu, and I will spend the next 10 minutes presenting this very short study. So the current study looks at building intellectual capital in construction organizations to support environmental sustainability. So I'll spend just about 7-8 minutes. I will give a brief background. We'll look at the problem, the method, and some preliminary findings. So as we are all aware, the construction industry is one of the leading causes to the climate change crisis we are currently experiencing, primarily due to the enormous carbon emissions due to our intensive use of energy. And so we take a look at the current GST report by the United Nations Convention's Framework on Climate Change. The bottom line is we need to intensify efforts in mitigation and adaptation. And so in 2022, the World Green Building Council came up with a strategic framework that would support the construction industry to prepare for climate change. In this current study, we zoom in on one of the key actors, the contractor, that is the construction organizations. How do they build knowledge for green transitions? Yes, so in this study, what we did was that we conducted a comprehensive literature search. Then we followed this up with an expert survey involving 177 global sustainability experts. Then we developed a hypothetical model that can be used by any construction organization to effectively transition into a sustainable firm and contribute to environmental sustainability. Our experts were primarily from South America, Asia. We had major representation from Africa and Ghana for the matter. Yes, so basically what we found was quite interesting. Before we come back to this figure, I'd just like to present the model we are presenting here. So from this framework, we hypothesized all three dimensions of intellectual capital. So green intellectual capital in this regard, we are primarily focusing on the relational dimension. We are looking at the human dimension and the structural dimension. For any contractor that wants to improve environmental performance, all these three has to be present. But in the current literature, what happens is that we do not have models that contractors can effectively use for these transitions. So from this model, from a glance, we can see that all three types of structural capital contribute to environmental performance: the structural, the human, and the relational. When you look at the direct relationships here, you would see that the relational dimension contributed the most to environmental performance. That is at a coefficient of 37%, followed by the human dimension and the structural dimension. And this study, for instance, when we talk of the structural, we are looking at the policies, green organizational policies. The human, we are looking at how environmentally aware the employees are. Then the relational, we are talking about the contractor's relationship with suppliers and his relationship with green financing organizations. By looking at this framework alone, we're not able to get much insights. Although it tells us that the relational dimension is the most important, we can also see some mediating relationships from the structural and the human capital dimension. And so we conducted further analysis using artificial neural networks. So the primary reason was that when we are using the partial least square structure equation modeling, we only consider linear relationships. And so in this regard, it's easy enough to say that the relational aspect contributed the most to environmental performance, but there are some hidden mechanisms that holistically led to these results. And so we sought to unravel some of these insights using machine learning approaches. So we divided the data into two. We had 177 sample, so 90% for training and then 10% for testing. From the analysis, we did a 10-fold cross-validation. By checking the root mean square error, the model achieved a very high predictive accuracy with root mean square error of 0.0004. And what does this imply holistically? We tried to look at the normalized importance. So earlier in the linear model, we were able to see that the relational dimension contributed the least directly to the most important to environmental sustainability. But when you consider all the internal dynamics, the non-linear relationships, then the ANN tells a different story. It is telling us that the structural component of every organization is the pivot for transitions. This tells us that if we want to really transition, if we want to cause systemic transition in organizations for environmental sustainability, key starting point is the structural component. So by this, we're talking about first developing a strategic policy. Without a green policy plan, it will be difficult for organization to transition. That is the primary insight we had from this study. So we drew several conclusions from our model that the structural component of the organization, although contributed the least directly to environmental performance, but if you want to put everything together, if you want to look at the broader picture, it is the most pivotal dimension to consider if you want to build green intellectual capital in construction organizations. And then we also...
Your time is up.
Yes,
please.
we also want to stress... Oh, okay. Well, that's the final point itself. So we also want to stress how to develop the relational dimensions, like building trust with financing organizations and fostering relationships. The extended manuscript can be viewed by scanning the QR code here. Thank you, everyone, for your time.